Welcome back to the Talk It Out podcast. My name's Dan from UK Bike Fit. This is Jen, physio and bike fitter, also from UK Bike Fit. And this is our special guest today, Morgan Newberry. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell people what you do for a job and why you're here, basically?
Hello, I'm Morgan. I'm a paracyclist. I ride for GB. I'm just in the last month back from Zurich, where I won my first ever medal.
All right. Took 2 seconds, you already dropped that one.
I have to tell them.
Morgan's a pretty decent cyclist, and you're in C5 category.
Yes.
Paracyclist. And we're going to talk about, the topic we're going to talk about today is coaching. We're going to talk a little bit about what you do and what you've done and achievements and whatnot, but we're also going to dig into how you're coached, because for the 3 months before you won the silver medal, you self-coached, whereas before that you'd been coached by, I guess, conventional coaching, right? So we're going to dig into that a little bit. But yeah, I guess we'll start with how you've got up to this stage, like what, sort of give us a bit of a breakdown of your career. Morgan's very, what's the word?
I just like
modest. Morgan's very modest about humble about her achievements.
Stay humble.
Until she won this medal, and now it's on every Instagram post.
And now it's all changed. But yeah, tell us about how you've gone through your career so far up to now.
So I've been riding for a while. I've always ridden a bike, and when I finished my A-levels and went to uni, I wasn't riding a road bike, but I was just riding. I wasn't riding with anyone else. But when I went to uni, I joined the uni club, met loads of people, properly bought a road bike, and started really enjoying cycling. And then to get into racing was really random for me. I kind of firstly had a message from someone on Strava, from actually an old teacher, and he said, there's a talent ID coming up for paracycling, why don't you join, have a go. Anyway, I went through all the talent ID stuff, and I went through the processes and got onto their foundation development squad, and then kind of started racing on the para scene. It was really cool. It was I did nationals, I raced some of that, there was lots of local crits that they do. And there weren't many people that I was racing in the paracycling national scene, because there's not many people racing, but that's how I got into it. I got into it with uni. I really enjoyed cycling, made some friends, then I was getting into the paracycling scene just through random kind of coincidence. I hadn't even thought about it actually when I first started cycling. And from there, obviously we had 2020 that kind of put a thing on the plans, but I knew that I wanted to give it a go, having a go at paracycling.
And how do you go from just racing to then getting into paracycling at the level you do now? Step up process?
It was kind of random. I was just racing at a national level, and I was basically needing the opportunity from GB. So they needed to say, we'll have you and we'll take you to a World Cup, basically, which is the international races. And I thought that opportunity would come maybe 2021, but obviously we had COVID, so it kind of put a bit of a thing on the plans. They weren't happy to take a big squad. So I was looking that in 2022, obviously after the games, they were kind of reshuffling the programme, and that's when I got an opportunity to come onto the programme. And then since then I've raced quite a lot of World Cup events. The first year, I think I got quite a lot of, I think I top 10'd in nearly everything. And then literally last year, 2023, podiumed in all the TTs that I did for the World Cups. I think I podiumed on a road race I did, and then I've raced at the World Champs since. Here we are in 2024.
Yeah.
World Cup and a World Champs medal.
So was this your first World Champs?
This is my first World Champs, and it felt like it'd been not been a long time coming, but it'd been a hard year, and it really felt like, wow, that was really worth it, sort of thing.
And because you've done the track as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've raced both road and track, endurance events.
So tell us a little bit more about paracycling and how the categories work, your category, and a little bit about that for people that don't know.
Yeah, so in paracycling there's 14 categories. There's 5 cycle, which are called C categories, and they range from 1 to 5. And basically I'm a women's C5, so a C5 is like the least disabled sort of thing. And then also there's hand cycling, which have 5 categories again, once again, like 1 to 5 being varying on condition. And they nearly all like wheelchair users. And then there's tandems and trikes, so that's another 4 load of bikes. But yeah, the women's C5 is a really good category. It's been top of the podium is always Sarah's Story for the last 20 years. So it's quite a hard category to come into. There's been Crystal Lane Wright, who's nearly always been second to Sarah. So it's been really cool to be part of the programme as a women's C5, but it's quite a competitive category, and especially being a GB rider, it's quite hard.
Yeah. And in the C5 category, is there a mix of disabilities across the board? Yeah,
so I have one hand, which is quite a common, like that's quite common for a C5, but when you look at the classification, it's quite a difficult process. So there's a lot of people with maybe like a nerve damage, or they're born with maybe a slight like club foot. So they've got like a lower leg impairment that maybe means they don't have full range of movement. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like people like me, we're quite easy to just look at and see, oh cool, you've got like one hand, that's that. But yeah, some of them you wouldn't be able to tell, but there's obviously something going on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we've got to talk about the topic of the day then, coaching. So you say you've been coached most of the time through your career.
Yeah.
Up to 3 months before the World Champs, and then you decide to go self-coach.
Yeah.
So I guess tell us a little bit about why you made that decision and what the differences are between being coached and self-coached, other than the obvious differences, obviously.
Yeah, so I would say, I've always been coached for like 5 years. I've been coached, and you know, it's a really cool relationship when you've got a good coach. But for me, I think I've been coached for quite a long time. I was coming into the Paralympic year, and it got to May, and I kind of knew I wasn't going to make selection for Paris, which was a disappointment, but like, you know, I just knew that was that. My coach, you know, coaches multiple athletes who would be going to Paris, and it was just like, I was like, he's not going to be able to commit his time to me. I really want to show what I can do at the end of this year. It was the last race of the season. So I just said, you know, it's just the way time had fallen. Like, I was just like, I need a bit of time just to do my own thing. So yeah, I've self-coached for the last 3 months before Worlds. And yeah, I really enjoyed it and learned a lot, I think.
Okay, and how did you start from self-coach? So obviously there's this like point where you're going from coached and changing to being self-coached. What did you have a conversation with the coach at the time then? Like, how did that go? We
had a big chat, and I basically just said to him, I don't think I can be coached for another few months. You know, it gets a bit repetitive. I had some ideas that I wanted to try. And it was he completely agreed with everything I said, and I agreed with everything he said. We said we would stay in touch, and I would put a plan together, and he would look through the plan and give me his thoughts on it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the sign of a really good coach, though.
I agree.
Because essentially, your coach should be there for you, and everything should be done around you. So if I've had similar conversations with people in the past, and I think the sign of a good coach is someone who's that's fine, go and be coached by someone different, or go and be self-coached, and I'll always be here for you if you want to come back. Whereas I know other people that I've had conversations with where their coach just has a full meltdown and takes it out on them, but that's...
Yeah, it's like a bit of self-discovery, isn't it? You need to... It doesn't mean we're breaking up. We kind of just went on a break. It's actually what the joke was.
From a coach's point of view, it's obviously it would be upsetting.
Yeah.
But as a coach, you're there for that person, and everything should be about the athlete. None of it should be about you. So go home and be sad about it.
Definitely.
But don't put that on the athlete.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that 3 month period before World Champs race, then, what sort of things did you do differently compared to before? You said you wanted to try a few things, so what things do you have in mind?
Well, I think I got a little bit obsessed with, I've been coached for a few years, and I felt like I'd done a lot of endurance rides and a lot of long days out, kind of hammering myself for no real reason. In para, the races aren't very long. We're not ever doing back-to-back races, and I just felt like I was training a little bit more like how, say, they would if they were doing back-to-back races, stage races. And I actually wanted to target the time trial. So I wanted to focus solely on going out, riding a time trial about 2-3 times a week, and then the rest of it really being not specific intervals, just an easy ride. Like I would do the intervals on the TT bike, and then on the road bike, I would go out, either ride really easy or do like, just go out and ride hard up some hills just for getting in the training, like the intensity. And you know, we'd done that before, but I just really wanted, what I said to him is I was like, I just think we've done too many like 4-hour rides back to back, and I just think I'm tired, and I just think we take out the volume and we just focus on the quality. And that was really what my focus was. It was the quality of what every session was, and it kind of how it flowed over the 3 months before.
Yeah, rather than hours and hours on the bike.
Yeah.
So how long is yours? Obviously, you were training for time trial and road race. So how long were your time trial and road races then?
So the time trial was, it was the same as what the women did. So it was 30k. It was quite hilly. Like basically the first 15k was nearly all uphill, and then it went down a pretty horrible descent and was just a 15 kilometre just straight TT to the finish, like flat road. Mm-hmm. And then the road race was 70k, once again with the first half of it being pretty hilly, but then onto a kind of finishing circuit that was 7 laps of a 10k course that, of a 6k course that were pretty short, and nothing special. So 70k and a 30k TT.
So something less than 4 hours basically.
So literally training for 2.5 hours max.
Yeah. Okay, and how did you feel like going into being self-coach when you're actually doing it? How did you feel like after a month, 6 weeks? Did you feel like you were making improvements? Did it feel weird, or did you feel insecure about what was going on and not knowing where you were? Or
Yeah, I really enjoyed it for the first 2.5 months. I enjoyed it for the first 2 months. I trusted it. I really enjoyed how the weeks flowed, like one after the other, because I did put it in as a big long plan. Obviously, you know, if things need to change, they would have had to change. But no, I really enjoyed it for 2 months, and it was only the 4 weeks before where I just got a little bit of cold feet and didn't trust myself as much. And that's where my feedback actually to my coach was, if I was to do this again the month before the race, I think I would want more input, because that's what I just didn't trust myself. I didn't know. I said to you,
the first time you were doing it, you just started to panic a bit, didn't you?
Yeah. It's just like, oh, am I?
Because that's another thing that like your coach is there for, is like when you're doubting yourself or whatever, they're like that backup of like, no, you're going to be fine. And then when you're doing it on your own, you just don't have that person. So I think for the first time it's always really hard, because you've got to have that self-belief. You
have to just trust yourself. I think I said to you once, I was like, oh, I just don't know. And you were like, just need to trust it. Like you just need to trust yourself. And I was like, yeah, it's true. That's it.
Great.
Yeah.
So did you ever contact your coach whilst you're being self-coached for this or anything?
At first, like I said, he went through it. He thought it was a really good program. He thought it made complete sense. And probably, like I saw him a few times just to ride. But yeah, because it was summer, so we had summer on our hand. It was nice to ride. I just felt really good for the whole time, basically. I didn't really have any like stumbles or anything like that. Just got on with the training and was managing to do sessions that I felt like normally I can't really do, because I'm always just a bit tired, and there's an excuse that comes out, like I didn't manage this because of this. And I just felt like I pushed myself and I was able to do it, and I was really pleased with that.
Yeah. And were you like doing any sort of testing through that 3 months to see like where you were, or because I presume you'd be doing that with the coach, and so that you can see where you're at? So were you continuing that, or did you just give that a break?
I find the testing thing really hard, because I think it's really important to like test yourself regularly, just so you know where you're at, not necessarily to be getting better, but just so you know, here I am, that's fine, it makes sense. So I did a 3 and 9 minute test within the like first week or two of starting, and the numbers were really good, and I was really surprised at it. And I didn't actually do that again, just because it never really it didn't really make sense. But what I was doing was a progressive time trial session where the numbers were going up. So it was just good to see, like I was increasing, like the rest time was decreasing, and like the amount of reps was increasing, and the power was staying up. So I was really happy with that. Yeah. Cool.
And have you gone back to being coach now?
Yes, so I've just enjoyed a nice off season. I literally haven't ridden for like a month, and I'm now going to be coached again by my old coach, because I think there's just a point where it's like I'm now ready to move on. Like I have enjoyed that period of time self-coaching, but I can't sustain it for another 4 years or however long. I think this is going to be a thing. Like I'm going to want to have a break away from him, and he might want to, and that's fine. But for now, like he's going to coach me over this winter, I think, and we'll see what happens next year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because obviously it went well.
It did go well.
There's a nice big chunk of metal sitting there. But was there anything, now that you've done it and gone through that process and now started being coached again, is there anything that you think really didn't go well through 3 months, or was like a really big negative of being self-coached, or anything that you missed whilst you were being self-coached?
No, I think like if you were brand new to cycling, it wouldn't work. I think when you hold enough like knowledge on everything and you like know enough people that you could ask them questions, I think it just made sense. Like I knew what I was doing. I enjoyed playing on like the coaching software, and also like I think I was a bit skeptical about that, and I think it was good to have a go on it. And actually, maybe I am skeptical about that, the numbers it shows you, just with how you're meant to feel. But it was just interesting to properly put my own, like I was making the sessions, I was doing the sessions, the numbers were coming out, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's an interesting game of trying to play the numbers. Because they also, I think sometimes believe they maybe played too much, and we like trust the numbers so much, and I didn't trust them.
What's this coaching software?
Like Training Peaks or like intervals, they all use the same algorithms.
Yeah, and what numbers are you referring to? And
like your fitness and like your fatigue levels. You know, because you're meant to have, if you look at and you read all the data, like what's been written to kind of make Training Peaks, it all like the way you would plan it is so you're like getting a certain amount of like fitness increase, which is like fatigue, and like it's like the score of fatigue and form, and yeah, you just get to a point where like you obviously have increased it and you need to like decrease it a bit. But for race day, you want to get to this certain point, and they're like telling you what all the numbers should look like, and you know my numbers kind of look like it, but people get. I just think it's so easy to get obsessed with it, isn't it? And I don't think that's necessarily the way.
Also, I think if you're gonna ever be self-coached, like you have to like know yourself really, really well. Yeah. I don't think you can do it if you don't. Like you've got to have a really good understanding of your personality, know what works well for you and what doesn't, and also like it's normal to have a wobble, but you've got to be like confident in yourself, and you've got to be able to like. Well, I still think this with a lot of coaches as well, that just work on numbers. Like you've got to work off feel, and if you've been an athlete for a long time, you'll learn and you'll know your body, and you know how you react to stuff, or you know when something feels good or bad. But a computer can never tell you like exactly how you feel, and some days you've got to be like, no, it says I feel good, but I actually feel shit, or the other way around.
Definitely, I think that's a definite, like that's the most important thing to remember, like especially like being a woman, like your body is not those numbers, because there's also a hormone cycle going along with that.
By a woman either.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
So when you were racing as you're an ex-elite triathlete, did you have a coach throughout the entire?
No.
Did you have a coach at all?
Yeah, so I always had a swimming coach, and after my first Commonwealth Games I actually went back to my old swimming coach who used to coach me when I was a swimmer. So that was like he is still in the Isle of Man, so that was like a distance coaching, and that was one of the best things I ever did. But actually my coach from Sheffield, he'd left Sheffield and then I'd been coached by someone else for swimming, and then we like got on really well, but the squad that I was swimming with just weren't good enough to be able to push me, so I went back to my old coach Max, and that was the best relationship. And then in my last couple of, for the full of my last year and maybe a bit before that, I never had a triathlon coach. I would always have a separate, and again I think that's because I'm from a swimming background, that like this might be really like big-headed or something, but I wouldn't trust a triathlon coach to coach me swimming because it's so technical. I would always want a swimming coach to coach me swimming. So yeah, for my last, I coached myself bike, run and gym.
Well, it's like anything, isn't it? If you want to learn a specific skill, then why not get the expert in that specific skill to teach you, rather than this person who can do lots of stuff. But
I know way more about like swimming as my most knowledgeable sport because I've done it since I was so young, like as an international swimmer at the age of 10. But it's so technical, and like cycling really isn't. Like it's very you don't need to coach. It's very easy to kind of coach
and to
yourself.
Coach it, it's hard to coach cycling. It kind of comes naturally, doesn't it? Like the skill of racing.
And also like Morgan said, like I'd had so many years, like I'd had almost 20 years of being an athlete in some capacity, so I think you forget that you have so much knowledge. And then I've also like got a physio degree, a S&C coach, like all those other things that you add on top. You've been around you've had your lactate tested like 10 million times, your VO2, like you know so much that you actually don't realise that you know. That it's quite an easy thing to do, whereas someone who's brand new and had never done any sport before, I'd been involved in endurance sport my entire life. So I know what kind of sessions you need to do, you know how many times a week you need to do it and all of that kind of stuff.
I think a lot of people as well, like for beginners getting into cycling, to sort of make this relatable, if you just start riding with the power meter for the first time, then you're constantly looking at the numbers, or if you ride indoors, you're constantly looking at the numbers. After a certain amount of time, you can just feel when you're riding at a certain power.
So like, I was so good as a feel athlete, and I would regularly not have my power meter on, and I could tell you exactly what I did, and I would do reps up Froggatt, and I could do 5 reps and all of them would be within 5 seconds of each other, and it's like a 14-minute climb. And every single one would be, but I was so good at that as a kid when I was swimming as well, so I was just like a really consistent athlete. But I also think when you're being self-coached, like, you need to be intrinsically motivated. Like, some people need someone to tell them what to do and to keep them accountable and whatever. Like, I never needed that. I never needed somebody to be like, you have to get out of bed and do this today. I would just happily go and do it. And I was like that as a kid as well. But there's some people who might have all the knowledge and stuff that we have, but if your personality just doesn't suit it and you need someone to keep you accountable to it, like, you're never going to be able to. You'll do a week of self-coaching and then you'll stay in bed and not be able to
I'd say that's probably would be me. So that's why I need to be coached now, because I'm not as motivated. I was really motivated for 3 months, but I can't do that. Like, I'm like trying to go back to training. I mean, I'm just happy to just stay up and just go for a walk.
But I guess when you're doing that, when you've got 3 months until like a massive race.
It was really nice. Yeah, you saw the end point. Otherwise, the end point's, when's the end point now? It's like 4 years, maybe.
Whereas, I can crack on with no end point and train forever. And
I mean, that's a different level.
So is that your next thing now then? Like, what's your next sort of target for, in terms of coaching, like what you're aiming towards now?
Well, I think that getting this medal has just given me like the confidence that maybe I needed. I think I was a little bit unsure about whether I wanted to, like, kind of, when you're kind of on a program, I think I'm obviously a rider for GB. The way it does work is in 4-year cycles. So like, you are kind of now committing to the next 4 years. So, you know, you're asked the question, are you going to commit to the next cycle, which is obviously LA. And I think getting this at the point where I got it, where it had been a tough year, just didn't feel like I was going well. And then, you know, obviously the Paralympics happened, I wasn't there. Now I'm like, I think I'm good enough to give this next 4 years a go and hopefully get to the Paralympics, And then I think I'll be done with it.
I think that's normal as well. Like, most athletes, and I have the same thing, like, you almost give up at some point and everything's really, really shit. And then if you come through that, like, then it gets good. And that, you just have to hang on.
And I think just like getting to a point where you've, like, whatever that achievement is that you needed, for me, like, any colour medal would have been amazing. And this was just like, wow, like, that was amazing. And now I'm like, okay, cool. This is actually way more fun than it had been.
It makes
just because everything had felt rubbish. It is funny the way everything works, because nothing's actually changed. This just happened, you know.
But it's hard work. Like, you're constantly pushing yourself every single day, and if you feel like it's for nothing and you're not getting anywhere.
I do actually always say that, like, it's not as being an athlete, you don't feel like you get the job satisfaction, because you're not just going, like, it's session after session, you can tick it off, but no one really says well done. Nothing really changes because of it. So I think that getting this medal for me was like, okay, cool, like, my cup is full with job satisfaction for now. I'm happy to kind of give it a go for another 4 years. I
mean, that's the crazy thing, isn't it, that as a reward has taken all of those years of ticking session after session off and doing it without any sort of tangible
think, like,
thing.
So many people who, if you haven't been an elite athlete, forget that. So they'll, like, see somebody at the Olympics get a bronze or come fourth when they thought that they'd win gold, and they'll be like, they don't realise that it wasn't even 1 year or the 4-year cycle. Like, literally they'll have been training for that one moment for like 20 years. Or however.
It's just whatever they've given up for it, and like, it's always a lot to get to the games, isn't it? So I think it would be cool to see what happens in the next few years.
Cool.
But for now, I'm back to my coach.
Well, good luck with the next 4 years, and fingers crossed we'll have another chunk of medal here in 4 years' time.
Yes, hopefully.
And thank you very much for joining us, and thank you everyone watching. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Any help you can give us to share this podcast would be great, so we can get some more guests on like Morgan and talk to you some more. So thank you very much, and see you on the next episode.